Hey, Sammy here. I'm not your typical job counselor. I work remote and I travel the world as I kickstart careers. This is raw, real, and on the road.
Hi, I'm Sami, and this is the Career Kickstart Show. I am super excited to have Isabelle Rizo in the digital house, if you will, because she's amazing. She is like this awesome, like artist, storyteller. Like her life is performance art. It's amazing. And I have been working with her for a while to, like, get my own story on straight, have a little bit more flair. And if you look at her branding pictures, you will see all the feathers. So she has like flamingo, like raven flair. I love it. But Isabelle, please introduce yourself and just let us know more about you.
I thought you did a fabulous job. I'm Isabelle Rizo. I'm a performance artist, singularity storyteller, futurist, former digital nomad. Many lifetimes lived in one. And my whole thing is, how do you integrate all of those things and all of those stories in a way that can serve others and you can create a living from it, and inspire others to do the same.
Oh, and I love that because that is one of the things that I try to help, not with your like snazziness, but I try to help my career clients be like, you got to get your own story straight. At least be consistent. You have like a lovely, like artistic way of, we're all artists and let's bring it together. And I'm more like, you need to just say, the same thing on your resume and to the interviewer. But what I really appreciate about you is that you are such a creator. You really know how to not just create the stories, not just create the art, but you also create community. And that's part of why I brought you on here, because I've worked with a number of artists who, they're beautiful souls and they are beautiful creators, but they don't know how to take their art and make it a career, make it a lifestyle, make it something to where they can actually focus on that. And you so generously agreed to be an expert to tell us how to create a community of kindreds, beautiful artwork, in a platform that shines both online and offline. Oh, that's a lovely title.
I love how your energy just shifted when you said that. I was like, yeah.
It is. And whoever's going to listen to this is going to be like, geez, Sam, put your girl crush away, but I won't. I won't. So Isabelle, just kind of like explain a little bit. I'm very interested to know, like, I think the why, why is that important? And then kind of get into how.
Yeah, so my background was really with the Vlog Brothers, the nerd fighters, and they were just having conversation and being their authentic selves and being nerdy, and slowly over time they grew an audience, and they were like, we don't want to just have an audience, this is a community. And the distinction between audience and community, I think, is a really big one, because a lot of artists in trainings are like, well, who is your audience, right? Where today we have platforms like Patreon, and we have different subscription models that are really popular for artists, that they can make a living that way. The Singularity Circle, my program, is almost like a subscription model as well, of if you enjoy my artwork, if you enjoy the community, like, here you go, here's different price points. And so it's very important to be really clear about who you are, your self-awareness, your style, what things attract you, and what aesthetics you like. So I love really minimal, almost a little bit like the boutique luxury brands, a little bit mysterious, esoteric, but very exquisite. And I love those kinds of being in that kind of environment, like being around those curated things, like I work once a week, I go and help a curator at a gallery as well, and I help curate experiences. So when people walk into a space, they'll feel a certain way. So I love when you said even just the sentence of how to attract your kindred and things like that, that immediately shifted your energy and your emotional state. So that comes from a really deep self-awareness and self-knowing around, this is what I like, this is what I do not like. And I think a lot of artists are, they're awesome and creative, but it's also important to create these like containers for your creativity, because otherwise it's just going to be chaos. And so having a community where you do talk regularly about certain things, like your 3 containers or your 4 containers. So for me, this upcoming month, we're talking about finances, and I know your big thing is economic empowerment, and I'm like, you cannot make art without economic empowerment. Like canvases and equipment and stuff is not cheap. And also learning to take care of, your root chakra stuff. And then the other thing I talk about is, what is your singularity story? Getting clear on your desires, because a lot of people are clear about what they don't want, but they're not clear about what they do want. And then we just recently did an attracting your kindreds based on visual storytelling. So what certain aesthetics appeal to certain kindreds, to certain ideal clients, collaborators, raving fans, dear friends. For me, they're all kind of bunched together because I know, this in the singularity circle, I curate people. I'm like, this is a really cool person, this is a really cool person, and I want to just like put you all together and then like watch you guys collaborate and make magic happen. And facilitate that, of course, but like allowing you all to be your, I hate the word authentic self, it's just overused, but being your, avant-garde. What are the differences that really make you shine, that really make you distinct? Because that's really what it is in online space, also in offline space. Your really clear distinctions, like you mentioned, the black feathers or like the red lipstick, like those have become signature things that people associate with me now. But that's just because I was being me and being consistently me.
Yeah, and I love how, and it's true, she is a people collector. If you are listening, she collects people, not in a creepy way, but just in a like more like a matchmaker way. But it is very true. Like I have worked with a number of artists where, the ones who can actually make livings and the ones who can like intentionally design their lifestyle, those are the ones who can keep on creating. But I also know a number of people who are artists in their souls, but they just can't create. Their energy goes into all these different areas, so that gift, fades. And what I think is very lovely about what you do is that you kind of take this digital marketer world, which I mean, I'm part of it in some ways and I've seen it, but sometimes it's like cheesy. Like there's a cheese to it, which for a lot of people who are like artists, like they don't want that kind of cheese and sleaze,
like being associated with that. It's just like, ugh.
No, and the selling and the, all that sort of stuff. But you like have been able to find a way to make it so you can be in this online world. And as opposed to just kind of like following, this is the formula, this is what you have to do, you have really made it where it fuels you just as much as it fuels the people who follow your work. And I find that fascinating because I think that is something that so many artists should have. I know that when I had a writing group, I wrote all the time. And I know for my friends who have been very diligent with their art, one of the techniques that they use is that they always have like a studio buddy. So they go to the studio with them. And there's always someone to be like, oi, that, that painting's not going to paint itself, or something maybe more couth. But, in general, they have someone to be like, with them. And I think that community is so important, especially for people who are still developing. How do you, how is that something where you can you talked about being consistently yourself. Like, how can somebody, kind of draw in and attract and find people who are going to resonate with them? How do they do that?
So I would, well, I have my 5-day storytelling challenge, but also the other thing is, this is a really good exercise too, is going through your friends and asking them, hey, when you think of me, what do you immediately think of that I can help you with? Or when you think of me, what associations do you make? Like, you're the one that always talks about Doctor Who, or you're the one that is always making tea, or you're the one that's always, into like the weird science stuff. So just taking note of those things, because those are things you're already really attracted to, that really light you up. Like, you can spend so much time just talking about astrology, or talking about astronomy, or talking about ecology, whatever it may be. Like, those are the things that light you up and give you energy. And then what are some symbols or associations you have that you can always either wear or speak about, or there's some kind of element aesthetically that you're all like, that's become a signature thing of me. Like, when people see that, they will think of me. And even in your branding, it's very, very easy branding, you can go depth psychology, but for easy, something people can take away from this talk is thinking of 3 major colors. So 2 major colors and then 1 accent color, and just consistently using those things in online space, because then people start associating those colors with you. And even sharing a story around why you chose those colors. What do those colors symbolize for you? Because that adds a deeper meaning into, that becomes a creative process, right? Like, that becomes part of your artwork. Like, why I chose black feathers was because I had one painting where at the bottom of the painting there was this black feather, and I was in this transition of my life where I knew some stuff was going to become unhinged, and I was at a precipice, and I was like, oh my God, the black feather. And every time I send a painting now, I include a black feather, because I know it's a transition point for somebody. And there's just like this deep symbolism for me around this black feather. And then, of course, in the photo shoot, we're going to put black feathers in my hair, because I'm all about transitions and embracing the shadow and embracing all aspects of self, right? So I would look at those, what symbolizes those accented parts of your personality, and making a visual component to those things.
And one thing I will add to that is, when you can figure out those things early on, it means that you're not always reinventing the wheel when you're going to make a website, or if you're going to, have a Patreon or something. If you already know this is kind of where, my signatures are, then you're not like, what font am I today?
Exactly, because that, at a subconscious level, that even creates mistrust. I made a little post about this a while ago, because I did work at a health food store. I was one of the herbalists there, and people would come in and they would buy their supplements, they'd buy their herbs, they'd buy their beauty products, whatever. And as soon as a new company came on the market, like, oh my God, I would be so excited, I want to learn all about it. People would get hooked on the products, and then they would change the packaging design, and people would come in and like, wait, this isn't the same thing. They changed the formula, they changed this, they changed that, and it created this mistrust. And somebody being on the floor selling stuff was just like, part of the job was trying to explain to people, like, no, they're just going through transitions. It's like the awkward teenager stage. Like, no, it's still them. They're just, hormonal, So like you said, if at the beginning, it's kind of like a marriage. Like, you have discovered you, or just an aspect of yourself that you know you want to share with the world because it's something that you're passionate about. And you've got to stick with that. That's one of the containers, right? For if you are a creative artist and like, who am I? I don't know. It's really like, just build a container so you can build some momentum and attract your kindreds that way, because they're going to be attracted to your story. They're going to be attracted to your aesthetic. They're going to have very similar, it's very funny. A lot of the people that reach out to me and we do SSEE mentoring or a Singularity Circle program, they reach out to me and their stories are like starkly similar to mine, even though I've never shared all aspects of my story. I'm like, this is so weird. Visuals are very powerful things that almost at an energetic level will attract your people.
Yes, and that is one of the things that I find so awesome about social media. For me, like, I grew up in like the country, like nobody around, and thank God we finally got internet, because I had already read everything from the library at that point, because I wasn't really into humans at that stage of my teenage life. And like, that is the thing, that you can say a whole lot of stuff about social media, but it can bring people together who feel like, there's nobody who is like them where they are, which I feel like for anybody who's ever felt like an artist, they probably had that moment where they look around their town and they're like, oh my God, these guys, these gays. So I know I have, but I know that someone's probably looked around, saw me, and said the same thing to themselves. So I get that. But that's kind of the cool thing about what you do, is that you're creating a community. You're not creating fans. You're not creating like followers. You are creating a community. And I feel like for many artists who want to be able to, and let's be real, they want to be paid for their visual and their emotional labor, because art is emotional. Art can, do so much for the viewer or the participant. And we kind of have like a society that just doesn't give artists their kudos, So for the artist who, worries about, I hear this a lot where they're like, oh, I'm worried about selling out and blah, blah, blah. Like, what would you say to somebody who doesn't know how to begin the process and they're worried about that kind of, feeling?
Oh my God, this is something that I deal with even with, within my own company when we're doing like freelance video stuff. And it's like, oh, I don't know, this is my emotion, and I feel like I'm selling myself, and I'm selling this, and that's not right, and all these objections. And I was like, do you have rent? Do you have food? Do you have that stuff? You do not trade, do you? You do not trade your landlord like, hey, I can do this thing for you, and it's okay, I don't have to pay my rent. It's just it's kind of grounding artists to shift out of the starving artist mentality. And I know that there's this romantic notion of artists just staying in their studio and they only have to paint or whatever it is that they're doing. And I was like, no, that's not how it is. Like, let's go back to regular life. And this is why I talk about economic empowerment and budgeting and time management and discipline, which is not a really sexy topic for artists. And this is why I coach and mentor as well, because they have to become self-aware of their own rhythms and their own desires and goals. So if they want to be doing shows and doing concerts, and they're touring, or they're an author and they want to be doing an indie book tour, like one of my clients is doing an indie book tour right now, like they have got to have the discipline to decide, like, for me, it's every Wednesday night is studio time. Like, I need to get stuff done, or a daily practice where they can put their artwork in. And there is no shame. And I know we talked about this before around like side hustles or main jobs, so that you can support yourself. And come from a place of, I'm going to be my full creative self-expressed self versus like, oh my God, I have to pay rent next month, and oh my God, I have bills next month. And then you're creating from this like fast-paced, fear-based self, which, I mean, there's some really great artwork that comes from there. But to fit in with that ideal, right, that artists have, like, I have my studio and I have my agent and I have my broker and like gallery curator, like, to get to that level is not just creating artwork, it's also making your marketing your artwork, making your networking your artwork, making your online platform an extension of your art. And I think teaching them to do that has been, first is mindset, definitely a mindset shift. And that's why, I do the things that I do to kind of gradually shift their mindset around, like, hey, it's okay to ask to charge for this book cover that I'm doing. I really love book covers, or I really love painting murals or doing this and building up a name for yourself, right?
Oh, yeah. And that is something where, thank you so much for sharing that, because that is something that I hear from, especially when I worked for a nonprofit. And I worked with a number of people who they had gone to school for art. They had never learned anything about business. And a number of them, because they had a marginalized identity, they were in dire straits. And they had been kind of pushed in this idea that an artist needs to always be struggling, and that they could never do this and they could never do that because that could be selling out. And then they ended up like not being able to do their art at all because they were going through some serious shit. And I don't know where that idea about selling out or anything came from. It just kind of pisses me off sometimes, because it makes art something that you can only do if you were born into money, which is bullshit. And it frustrates me. So I wish that I could have, like, there could be like a billboard or a guy in a plane with a sign where it just goes over art schools and it lets them know you deserve to be compensated. You deserve like a comfortable home that doesn't have like somebody trying to steal the copper from the hallways, like
exactly.
Your
and
life.
It is harder too for marginalized folks, and I'm a political refugee and also survivor of abuse and all these other things, and it is hard, and that's why I think I bring that up in conversation around intersectional entrepreneurship and honoring where you are at, and also here are tools before we even get into like your singularity story and your branding and all these other fun creative things. Like, let's start with root chakra, like basic needs, getting a job, like we have to start with where we're at. And I'm not saying that to like, I'm all about big leaps. Like, I booked one-way tickets and then just figured it out to do it. But at the same time, I also educated myself, and you were a former librarian too. Like, I lived in the library and I learned from mentors, and I absorbed everything I could before I took any big leaps, and I tried things out before I took any big leaps, where I see a lot of people are like, well, I can just become an artist and I'm going to quit my job today. And I'm like, no, savings, and like, do it in a smart way, like take care of yourself. And, and depending on their zodiac sign too, I'm always going to be like, if you're more fire or something, like, okay, that's maybe okay. But if there's like more water and stuff, and I'm like, no, please take care of yourself first.
Dreams are so much easier to go for, and mindset is easier to hone when you have bread in the cupboard. Like, I don't know about you, but I've lived with money and without money, and life is easier with money.
Oh my God, yes, I absolutely agree. And I know, like, was it one of my artist friends was just like, you're just about the money. And I was like, I've lived without, all right? I don't want to go back there. I've learned about financial stability and investments and, putting money aside. And I'm like, just because you haven't does not make my, experience of life invalid. So it's very, very important. It's definitely a conversation for maybe another time, but around shifting this mindset around the starving artist, because it does not help anybody.
Yes, and that is also, to bring it back to community, you also want a community of people who want you to be nourished, at a fundamental root level. You want to create when an artist is creating that community, creating that platform, they want to attract people who want them to be nourished and not to be tragedy porn in some ways, so one thing in this, we went very existential and stuff like that. I'm going to bring it back to something that's more of the soups and the nuts. What kind of platform, because there's a lot of platforms out there, and I know a lot of people who get stuck on frozen on trying to figure out, well, there's Instagram, there's Tumblr, there's blah, blah, blah. Where should I be? I'm going to be everywhere. And then they get frazzled. And then they're like, I'm going to be nowhere after 2 months.
Yes. I use Facebook, Instagram. I used to be on Tumblr. I'm occasionally on Twitter, and used to be really active on YouTube. So played around with all different ones. And I know you're the LinkedIn optimizer. For me, it's really I kind of equate it to this. Facebook, the majority of the planet is on Facebook. So it's really good to be on there. Instagram, I kind of see it as the gallery, the visual gallery. I love Instagram so much, and using the right hashtags will definitely bring you the right kindreds or just interesting people to collaborate with, work with. Twitter is I kind of equate it to the cocktail party, and hashtags are kind of like the little, if we were in an augmented reality cocktail party, right above certain groups, people just have their little drinks and they're talking, the hashtags would be floating above their heads, and that's what they're talking about. So you can know which group to join in, to join conversation. And it's also very instantaneous, but also a lot of people use Twitter to just I don't know, they pop in there and then they say things that they shouldn't, and then people screen cap it, and then there's drama. So that's Twitter. But there's some cool Twitter parties, Twitter chats that are on there that are really relevant. Facebook has awesome groups to connect with, because again, this is all social media platforms. Tumblr, I have not been on in a while, but I absolutely adore Tumblr for the artist community. And when I was in Asia, I used Tumblr because apparently it wasn't blocked by China. I thought it would be, but it wasn't. And I would document, my travels on my old Tumblr. So it really depends. I think Facebook for me is the main business one, because I love Facebook groups and curating community that way. YouTube is awesome for, just creativity and building community. It's not how it used to be back in 2008, but if you find a group of other YouTubers that you can collaborate with and grow together with over a year, then you'll find your audience on there as well.
Awesome. Thank you for that rundown, because I feel like that is one of the things that people, they get that info overwhelmed. So thank you for breaking it down. And Isabelle, thank you again for being a lovely expert on this topic of how to create a community of kindreds, beautiful artwork, and platform that shines both online and offline. Now, I would love you just to let us know, and all the listeners and everything out there, where they can go to find you on the interwebs.
Yes, so they can Google my name, Isabelle Rizo. It's ISABELLERIZO. They can find all my old blog spot from 2008 to my old YouTube videos to my present IsabelleRizo.com website, where they can find out about the Singularity Circle Mastermind, my SSE program, the Supernova Experience, the live event, and then the artwork as well.
Awesome. And you also have I'm going to name drop this. You also have a fantastic Facebook group called the Singularity Storyteller Incubator, or is it Storytelling Incubator?
Singularity Storyteller Incubator, yeah.
Awesome. So that is a great place for people just to kind of get a feel of the sort of experience that you curate and kind of get some inspiration. You know, it's a lovely group of humans. So thank you again, Isabelle, for being on the show. It was fabulous having you.
Thank you, and thank you for hosting the show.
Aw, thanks. Well, and thank you all for listening. I am Sami, and this is the Career Kickstart Show. Bye.
Find something cool at cool.careerkickstartacademy.com.